Hello and welcome to my Obinna TV. So for now, I will be looking at this is the Africa newspaper review. So this is the Africa newspaper review where I'll be looking at the top stories across Africa and then try to analyze it. So from Nation Africa, from Daily Monitor Uganda, Uganda President's son Muhoozi quits X. That is Ugandan President son Muhoozi quits X. Of course, you remember Muhoozi has had a real bantering out of his emotions. So basically, he said, I think what triggered maybe him to leave X was when he said the Ugandan army would attack Sudan, would attack DRC in order to liberate them. That's what Muhoozi Kainerugaba says, the son of the president, Yoweri Museveni. He says that the Ugandan army, UPDF, will attack Sudan and DRC in order to liberate them. So basically, you can see that in Africa, and I think that basically in Africa, we just we want this presidency to be a family thing. Look at President Yoweri Museveni. He is grooming his son. Either he is going to be a life president or he is grooming his son to be president. So basically, there is a lot of rivalry between the son of Ugandan President Muhoozi and the opposition leader Bobby Wine, where even Muhoozi said that he will chop off the head of Bobby Wine. So basically, Bobby Wine, Muhoozi is looking to secure his father. Remember, Yoweri Museveni said on his father, on capturing power in 1986, Yoweri Museveni said that the problem with African leaders is overstaying in power. But then now Museveni is a 39-year running dictator. He captured power in 1986, so that's 39 years in power, and he doesn't show any signs of quitting power. So that's why in Africa, basically, and I think we need presidential term limits. I think a lot of these dictators need presidential term limits. Such that, and really, the underlying theory of presidential term limits is that it is better to truncate the rule of a saint than it is to elongate the rule of a despot. That's the underlying theory of presidential term limits. That is, it is better to truncate the rule of a saint, say Mandela, than to elongate the reign of a despot, say Idi Amin. And so, in that, and then another story from Daily Monitor Uganda, you have that is Cameroon President Paul Biya is going to seek a seventh term in office. So you can imagine. So Paul Biya has been in power since for the past 42 years. So he has been in power for 6 terms of 7 years each, and he is going to seek another term in the presidency. Remember, Paul Biya, before that, he was prime minister for 7 years. So basically, he will be seeking another 7-year term. He is 92 years old. So by the time he will be done in next year's elections, then I think in 2026 elections, then by the time he will be done, he will be 99 years. So what has he not achieved for Cameroon that he now wants to achieve right now? So basically, that's Paul Biya. He will be seeking a 7th term on the presidency. So that's a top story from Daily Monitor Uganda. That is a Cameroon dictator, Paul Biya, is going to run for a 7th term. And I'll tell African leaders, if you have to stay in power, then basically at least provide economic livelihoods to your people. Don't just be a brutal dictator and oppress people politically, but also deprive them of economic freedom. That at least try and make your people prosperous. Look at the Saudi kings. Basically, yes, they are in power. Yes, you are not allowed to challenge the authority of the Saudi kings. But what do? They, in exchange for them giving you, surrendering your political freedoms to them, and then you basically you are economically prosperous. Look at Saudi Arabia. Look at Qatar. Qatar has one of the highest living standards in the world, and it goes to show that the basic premise of that is, if you have to be a dictator, then at least provide your people with economic power. That's how it is. Going to be in Africa. We need maybe benevolent dictators. Maybe that's what we need. And then from another story from Angola newspaper. This is from an Angola newspaper, Vera Angola. It says that the daughter of the former president Isabel dos Santos is going to run for presidency. Is going to run for the presidency. Of course, at one time she was Africa's richest woman. That is Isabel dos Santos. At one time she was Africa's richest woman. After her dad, that is President Eduardo dos Santos, placed her as the head of the Petroleum Revenue Authority of Angola. So that shows you in Africa, people get rich not by being close to power, not by your creative genius stick, not by talent, not by hard work, not by your skills, but how close you are to power. So you can imagine that Isabel dos Santos is going to seek the presidency basically after diverting public oil money into her private bank account. And when people look at such cases, they think Africa is a lost cause. They think Africa is a lost cause, and that is why then the people really have lost hope in Africa. So that's it. Then another story from Ghana Graphic Online, Mahama's second coming and the headache ahead in Ghana elections. So Ghanaian President John Mahama, I think, becomes the first African president to hold two non-consecutive terms. So basically, John Mahama becomes the first president in Africa to hold two non-consecutive terms. He was in power between 2011 and 2016, and 2012 and 2016, and then basically lost the election in 2016 and 2020, and then now won the election in 2024. So he was sworn in on January 7th, and basically what more will he bring to what more will he bring? And that is why I say democracy outside of the West seems not to be working. That is, democracy outside of the West seems not to be working, because I think, of course, it's a chicken and egg issue, or whether it is economic growth that leads to sustained democracy, or whether it is sustained democracy that leads to economic growth. But at least outside of the West, then democracy has not worked, simply because you have that is simply because you need to be able to have a per capita income of at least 10,000. So that's from Vera Angola. And then from Club of Mozambique, Mozambique withdraws opposition leader Mondlane diplomatic passport. That is, Mozambique withdraws opposition leader. Remember, there has been disputes in disputes in elections in Mozambique. So basically, the opposition candidates refused, say the vote was rigged, and that is why I say African opposition parties, if they lose power, then basically they crumble into a shell of their former self. So basically, I think African parties need to do more. Opposition parties. The tragedy in African politics is that the difference between the ruling party candidate and the opposition candidate is not in ideology or issues. It is in the tribe and region they are doing support from. Look at South Sudan. The president had to select 7 vice presidents. That is in South Sudan, so as to appease all regions in the country. Of course, some of it was to cut down the size, cut the opposition leader Riek Machar to size. But then you have President Salva Kiir, really, that is President Salva Kiir, you have him basically appointing 5 vice presidents. So basically, I think the difference between the ruling party and the opposition party in Africa is basically in tribe, and is not in ideology, but in tribe and region they draw their support from. And then, of course, that is from Radio Tamazut in South Sudan. Then from the Nigerian Guardian, that is from the Nigerian Guardian, Somalia and Ethiopia restored their diplomatic relations. From the Nigerian Guardian, that is Somalia and Ethiopia restored their diplomatic relations. Remember, Ethiopia had recognized Somaliland as a separate territory and went ahead to sign a memorandum of understanding with Somaliland. Remember, Somaliland broke away from the larger Somalia in 1991, so it's a fairly stable democracy, but it is not recognized internationally. And I think also a UK MP said that basically right now is the time to recognize Somaliland, and I think a few US congressmen. So basically, Ethiopia wanted to access the seaport of Somaliland, and then of course Ethiopia will provide Somaliland with the legitimacy for its passport. So basically, that is that is the newspaper review for now, and I think that's the newspaper review for now. Well, I have looked at the top headlines, but still another story from Monitor Uganda. IMF, that is IMF puts a finger on cost of patching up Uganda. So once again, African countries are caught up in these directives of the IMF. So why don't we have our own development bank? African Development Bank basically is suffering because we have outside investors. Maybe you have Japan, you have United States, you have no way investing in the African Development Bank. So when will we get our development bank? So that is the newspaper review from Africa, and that's the newspaper review from Africa for now. So bye for now till the next time. Bye for now.